On November 12th, I was at work when a mechanical failure sprayed a burst of pressurized hot water into my right eye. This caused a sequence of events, and I'm gonna go through how my recovery thus far has gone and what unexpected issues it's caused. Now that I'm a few months and a few surgeries deep, I just kinda wanted to put my thoughts out somewhere. I'm not entirely sure if what I have to say is useful, but the saying is useful to me. And I've never made a video in this vein before, so just up front, I will be talking about my injury and the details of my surgeries. I don't really know how I'm supposed to do disclaimers like this, but, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So that night I had a ton of fun. A coworker picked me up at the job site, then a friend took me from there. The first place we were directed to go to didn't have an ophthalmologist on call, so they sent us over to somewhere else where we waited in line for a few hours until they took me back. From here, they looked at me, I told them I had no vision in that eye, vomited, and then they made me wait another few hours. Then they brought me back, laid me down, made me wait. After a while, the ophthalmologist finally came in, told me not to lie down, and checked me out. She gave me some meds, some instructions, and let me go. The accident happened at about 5:30, and I got home at around 2 a.m. That night and the day immediately after, I had nearly zero vision in that eye. As the week progressed, however, I slowly saw more and more. In this early stage, it remained very dark in that eye, and it was extremely blurry. This week, as I'm sure you could have guessed, was not a lot of fun. I spent a while calling people and getting them up to speed, figuring out how I would get food into my house and making sure I was ready for recovery. But after that ER visit, I had some specific recovery requirements. I couldn't bend down, so tying my shoes was tricky. I couldn't lift weight over 10 pounds, so I needed more help than normal. Because the impact caused bleeding in my eye, that bleeding needed to drain away from the retina, so I couldn't lie down. The friend who took me to the ER lent me some pillows to prop myself up at night, and that was that. Except sleeping in a seated position sucks. You can't roll around, which is normally how I get myself to sleep. If you aren't careful, you'll end up with a sore back, or you might end up slouching in your sleep to wake up basically lying down. I got used to it, but it certainly wasn't comfortable. The worst was the last thing though. I wasn't allowed to read. Apparently my retina needed to stabilize, and the small, quick movements of reading would mess it up, so I couldn't. This wasn't too bad. There were a few TV shows I wanted to watch. The Last of Us is in fact really good, but I was still in school at this point, and I couldn't get to campus, so the best course of action was to email my professors. Thankfully, I can touch type, so I just closed my eyes and hoped there weren't that many typos. At this point, it was unclear if my left eye had taken damage and the off balance was masking it. My right eye was very dark and very blurry. I had to wear a protective eye patch at all times, and protective ones don't even look cool. This was pretty much it for a while, though thankfully they let me read again after a week. One day though, I was in for a regular follow-up appointment when the doctor said she needed someone else to look at me. She came back with another guy who did all the same tests again, and then another guy waltzed into the room, examined me briefly, and then scheduled me for a surgery the next day. He explained what was going on. I had been sleeping vertically to stop blood in the front from settling in the back, but the back was also bleeding. This had caused the retina to start peeling away, and while it hadn't caused any extra loss of vision yet, if it were left unchecked, it would cause complete blindness. But the surgery they were going to do is a rough one. The problem they needed to fix is the peeling retina. So to fix this, they burn the edge of the retina so that the scar tissue will reattach it. But this is an insecure temporary bond, so behind that they place a silicone band that holds that all in place. But during recovery, the retina needs to be held in place or the bond won't take, so they fill the eye with gas that floats to the top, applying pressure to the band. But for that to work, I need to remain face down at all times until the gas is leaked out and the bond is secure enough. Since this would mean I couldn't care for myself, I spent the week at my parents'. This surgery was just a few days before Thanksgiving, so I spent that day with my family, many of whom I hadn't seen in ages, unable to see anything but their shoes. While I was at my parents', a neighbor came over to talk to my dad about church stuff, saw my situation, and came back a few hours later with a massage table. Actually, the greatest thing that happened that week. That table was incredible. I could lay face down and comfortably have a screen in front of me. I brought my Steam Deck down there, and that's how I played Slay the Princess and Mother 3. Both incredible, but the accessibility on Slay the Princess is garbage, it probably wasn't wise to make myself read that text. Thankfully, at the end of that week, they told me recovery was going great. Most of the people who get this surgery are significantly older than I am. After that first week, I didn't need to remain face down, and my vision was improving. At this point, I could pass the vision tests reasonably well, but only if I cheated and didn't use the center of my vision. The impact had caused a cataract to develop, which was impacting my ability to see as well as the ability to monitor my recovery, so they put me over to a lens specialist and set me up for another surgery. These visits were kind of interesting because I was seeing a lens specialist for a cataract. Most of the people in those waiting rooms were significantly older than me. What we needed to do was a lens replacement, and depending on how much damage there was, several paths might be taken. The impact might have damaged the sac the lens sits in or the mechanism that holds the sac in place. Either or both of these could change the necessary steps drastically, but my doctor had done all of them before and had everything ready for any circumstance. These visits and discussion with the doctor were interesting because I already knew something about cataracts. I knew they were pretty easy surgeries and that they're super common as they develop naturally with age. Whenever I talked to people about the situation, most people would respond with, "Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry that happened to you." But when I told my grandma what the surgery was going to entail, she responded with, "Oh, I have artificial lenses too." This surgery was the easiest to go into because I already knew something about it. I knew people who had done almost this exact same thing. I was very confident leading up to the date until at my final appointment the day before, the nurse told me I was lucky because there were only a few doctors in the country who could do this surgery, and mine happened to be one of them. Yes, I am very thankful and very lucky that I just happened to have this injury so close to what is apparently such a good hospital, but am I lucky that my situation requires such a skilled surgeon? After surgery, the doctor gave us his personal phone number and told us to call him immediately if at any point anything went wrong. I'm glad to be getting such attention, but if such a special doctor is paying such special attention, is that a good thing for me? I'm glad to be cared for, but that level of care being needed caught me off guard and really scared me. Everything went fine after this surgery. I had no issues. I barely even reacted to the anesthesia. I only spent the first night with my parents, and my dad got us to watch Top Gun Maverick. Honestly, my main takeaway from that movie is that I really am a girl now. I didn't like it very much. At this point, my vision was brighter, on par with my left eye. It was still very blurry, and while the cataract wasn't causing issues in the center of vision anymore, now the issues with my retina were more visible. Part of the first surgery involved disturbing the retina, so now it didn't lie completely flat in the center. This meant that in my center of vision, there was warping all around. Things like door frames or lines of text appeared to bulge and warp. So after a few more weeks of solid recovery, I was scheduled for another surgery. This one was a routine follow-up from surgery number 1. They just needed to peel the scar tissue and flatten out the retina. And that surgery went great. It was super easy and I felt great coming out of anesthesia. I didn't even feel the need to stay the night at my parents'. Instead, I watched Return of the King and The Witch from Mercury at home. If you are undergoing any eye surgeries, I would recommend not watching movies you know will make you cry. It's really uncomfortable with the gauze and the eye patch. I'm pretty sure I cried blood. That's normal, by the way. My doctor specifically told me it could happen. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. My vision has slowly gotten better in the time since the surgery, but now it's pretty stable. It's still pretty blurry, even at large text sizes and with good fonts. It takes an incredible amount of effort to read. It's probably about 5-10% more sensitive to light than my left eye, which is already very sensitive. So now going outside, I wear the awesome sunglasses they gave me after each surgery. They're pretty dark, they fit over my normal glasses, and the peripheries are also tinted. They're amazing. And genuinely one of the best things to have come from this whole debacle. I've tried to buy some before, and I remember them being actually kind of pricey. But my eye is sensitive enough to light that I've considered getting a thin fabric eye patch for when I go outside, because the protective ones are perforated and don't do much for light. Physically, I'm feeling pretty good. I don't have the same issues bending down anymore. I feel like I could move just as quickly and lift just as much as before, though I'm still not allowed to, at least not for now. So that's pretty much all the physical bits of my new disability, and that's really just serving as context for the more interesting mental bits of this. I'm not super great at it, but before this, I had tried to be conscientious of disability and listen to disabled people. So a lot of this I knew about, though I'm only being made to live through it now. And I guess let's start with how I refer to disabled people. Because in a lot of contexts, I've used the phrase other disabled people in a way that I'm including myself with them. This is, of course, objectively true. My eye don't work. And sure, this is still a really new development, it's only been a few months, but including myself in the group of disabled people still feels weird for me to do. A lot of the limitations I've had have come from surgery, so that helps it feel not real. Surgery is not my normal state, so these problems are not normal. But of course, I have many new problems that are not the result of surgeries, and the only reason I'm getting these surgeries is the injury. If not for that, there'd be no need. And even accepting that, I still almost feel like I have it too good. Since my left eye still worked perfectly, a lot of the time I don't see any difference in my day-to-day life. I can cook, I can take myself to get groceries, I can read off screens perfectly fine. In most of the circumstances I'm in, there's hardly a difference at all. So when I lurk in online disabled communities, especially ones for visual impairment, I feel guilty about getting motivation from that. It feels like I'm using them as inspiration porn in the same way a fully abled person would. But of course I'm not. I'm not reading to feel the same things an abled person is, but to not feel alone. To remind myself that the exact adjustments I am now making, people have made before. When I marvel at the things disabled people can do, what I'm really doing is watching their adaptations and seeing if I can steal any for myself. So because I tend to deny myself the space to consider myself disabled, I also deny myself the space to adapt to that reality and make choices that will benefit me. I still feel kind of guilty that my family has to come pick me up every week if we want to spend time together. I get embarrassed about how jumpy I am grocery shopping because I don't have the peripheral vision I used to. I've caused myself a lot of eye strain because I didn't account for my new limits and then kept going because I didn't think of a solution. As I'm writing this, I'm basically as recovered as I'm gonna get, and I feel relatively stable, but only because I just so happen not needing to change my previous routines that much. While things were still changing, I was stressed getting myself groceries. I touched on this earlier, but it's hard to know if I should feel unlucky or lucky. I'm unlucky to have this occur, but I'm lucky to be in the shadow of such a nice hospital. It was actually lucky that what broke was the pressure line, because that meant the water that hit me was pure water and not acid or something. But also, the pressure line dealt much more brunt damage than anything else would have, though I am lucky it was the water and not the metal bit that hit me. I'm lucky this happened at work, because workers' comp is paying for all the treatment and I got quite a few paychecks. I'm unlucky that I had to be working a job that put me at physical risk with a boss bad at communicating, but we will get to that. And while I can recognize that both good and bad things are possible at the same time, with so much abruptly coming into my life, it's just made it kind of hard to process. Whenever I feel bad about how my life has so suddenly been impacted, some part of my brain rises up to remind me how lucky I've been and how I therefore shouldn't feel bad. When I'm feeling good and energized, my brain sabotages that mood to remind me of things I'll never be able to do again. My brain has been rubber banding back and forth for months, and while it has largely settled, I do often still feel that pendulum inside, making it harder for me to actually give a good think about what my life will be like going forward. And it's been really surprising and embarrassing when I stumble across something I can't do anymore. I've always been rather clumsy. Walking into walls or falling upstairs is not an uncommon occurrence. I still do that, albeit at higher rates. But I've never opened doors into my face before, and I nearly broke my glasses doing that recently. I've misjudged what part of the door I'm walking through and walked into the door frame. I've hit my head on so many cabinets. I jump whenever someone approaches me from the right side. And at each of these, first I have the reaction I've always had to me being clumsy. Oh, haha, I'm so dumb, lol. But while that's my initial reaction, and the one that others can see, there's always a thought that creeps in slowly. Did I just make it worse? If I can't see what's right in front of me, it's now always on my right side. So when I hit it, it always lands somewhere near my right eye. Often I'll sneak off to the bathroom and inspect my eye in the mirror, checking to see that I'm not more bloodshot than normal, frantically counting my fingers, trying to figure out if they're blurrier than usual. It's really sad when I try to do something that I've done before and can't anymore. The jack on my favorite pair of headphones broke again, so I tried to resolder it. I got everything out, the iron was heated, and what took me a few minutes last time suddenly became impossible. Redoing a headphone jack isn't too hard, but it is a tight space, and I suddenly realized that my depth perception was no longer precise enough to do this. I kept trying to apply solder to a cable that wasn't even touching the surface, and I nearly burnt my fingers a few times because I couldn't tell how far the hot tip was. One night, I was totally out of food, but rousing the energy to go buy more took a few hours longer than I was expecting, and by then, I realized the sun had gone down. Out of habit, I decided it'd be safer by car than bike, and so I drove to the store. I didn't place anyone in immediate danger, and no collisions were caused, but it was certainly not a wise choice, and not one I will make again. On my return, I just kind of sat in the driveway for a while. I'm really anxious to be able to care for myself, but here I sat, having waited so long to buy myself food that I didn't have anything left in the kitchen apart from hot sauce. I knew that was the case, made myself a list, but then procrastinated for so long I boxed myself into a choice that put me and others at risk. If this were anyone else, I would cut them some slack. Having your life so heavily impacted while your depression is already not doing so well would make it pretty hard to function. Having your physical recovery require things that hinder your mental recovery would make it hard to operate. This was something I had done countless times before, but I just sat there in my driver's seat, embarrassed that I had set expectations of myself too high, and was ashamed because too high felt like it meant feed myself. This one is strange though. Watching The Witch from Mercury After Surgery #3, I was having a great time, but watching those quick and tight maneuvers, one thought snuck into my brain. I couldn't do that anymore. It would make me go blind. When they put the gas in my eye, they reminded me several times that I couldn't get on a plane or go anywhere with a big change in elevation. That pressure change would cause I don't know, they never told me, but like not good stuff, permanent blindness in that eye. When I watch movies, I don't think that I could do what the characters are doing, or well, I thought so, at least. I don't think some part of me thinks that I might pilot a giant robot one day. I'm pretty sure what happened is some part of my brain realized I couldn't do the action, and then I realized the story wasn't about someone like me. That shouldn't have been a surprise, given that's been the case my whole life. It was just a strange moment of alienation, where I felt like a different kind of person to these characters, followed by, girl, obviously, was it the giant robot that tipped you off? The part of this that has caused the most frustration, though, is when I don't get believed. I will state something about how my experience is going, only to have that dismissed or explained away. I've been pretty big on the urbanism and public transit hype train for a while, and because I never shut up about it, most people around me know. In some of these conversations, even before my injury, I've stated disability as a reason that transit should be expanded, because the only viable option, being cars, really limits the freedom of mobility of a lot of people. For context though, my aunt is also disabled to a degree that she couldn't care for herself at all, so my family takes care of her. For a while, the response to me claiming we should build more bike lanes or run more track has been some variation of, oh, you're gonna make her walk? The fact that we need to take her places has been the "this discussion is over" button for a while, which is missing the whole point and shows a lack of interest in my argument as well as a lack of imagination, but I don't want to derail this too much. I don't know how to make this model wink. Using her disability to hand-wave my annoyance at lack of transit has continued, which is incredibly frustrating. I'm a good little Mormon gal, so I visit my family every Sunday, and they have to be my ride every week. They should be aware of how immobile I am without a car, but apparently they aren't. And not paying attention is one thing, but to have my direct complaints not acknowledged really sucks. I have directly complained about how bad transit is here, stated that I will eventually move to a city that isn't car dependent, only to be met with indifference and confusion. People still even toss things at me, which is really scary when you can't tell how far it is, how fast it's moving, where to move to catch it, if you'll drop it, if it'll matter if you drop it. And when you specifically ask people not to toss things and they do it anyway, I'm aware some of that is habit, but I've literally been saying no and backing away as people have tossed something at me anyway. With the vision I have now, my gut reaction to seeing an object in the air is to back up and cover my eye. I tried to play baseball with my younger brother recently, constantly, and every time he hit the ball, I panicked a little. So I said my injury was caused by a bursting pressure line, but that's not exactly true. My injury was caused by something much larger: capitalism. Surprise, surprise, the disabled trans girl doesn't really like capitalism. My boss does the same job I do on top of managing his state-spanning business. What that means for me is that he can be even harder to reach than my landlord. Whoa. 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 Whenever I needed replacement parts or more chemical or anything, I would have to ask literally months in advance. I've counted. When he became my boss roughly 2 years ago, he changed the system in which we handle company expenses, like gas or whatever. That system still barely works for me. I've been bugging him about it the whole time. When he replaced my pump, he put in a more powerful one without changing any of the pipes or telling me. When this obviously started blowing things up, he didn't schedule enough time for me to actually do the repairs I needed, and then implied I was falling behind because I couldn't wash at the same pace anymore. I had to fight to get a maintenance day, and then only then did they tell me the pump they replaced was causing the issues. The part they gave me to fix it was leaky, by the way. Basically, if I was really determined, I might be able to get away with suing my boss. I could have a decent enough paper trail to show enough knowledge and mismanagement of the risk that led to this whole situation in the first place. To be honest, I've only thought about it in a very abstract, idealized get revenge kind of way. I have no interest in actually trying, and I don't think I would stand any real chance. But I think about it sometimes because I am really mad at my boss. When I started this job, it was because it was the only one I could find that would allow me to pay my rent while leaving enough time in the week for me to attend school. I had the incredibly high requirements of totally normal life circumstances, and this heavily physical, newly discovered as dangerous job was all I could get. Looking for a new job has been excruciating. Either they require schooling that broke my soul all 4 times I tried, or they have physical demands that I'm not sure I can meet. Sure, I can theoretically lift 50 pounds as part of work, but I can't do that now, and I'm not sure when I will be able to again. Legally, I can drive, but driving for a delivery or on-site type job, I would probably end up killing someone. I know how to do PC and electronics repair, except with no depth perception, I can't see well enough to work on small devices. I could do video editing work, but don't tell anyone, I'm not actually very good at that. I really hope I don't have to go back to Chick-fil-A. And look at that sub count. I'm not nearly capable of starting a Patreon or whatever, and if tomorrow I woke up with 1 million subs and a proportional financial backing, I don't even think I could handle it. I mean, I'll figure it out. I have a cushion and a support system, so I'll be fine, but it is scary looking at all the jobs I could do have wages that couldn't pay my rent. Anyway, so that's basically it. This whole thing has poked at my depression and forced me to make some changes to my life, but overall, I genuinely am doing pretty well. I've had a lot of time to write and do whatever. Check out this game I made. Wait, you're not supposed to do that? So, yeah, that's what I gotta say. Thanks for hanging out here.